Hello and welcome to the Tinkercad's video gallery. Today I'm going to share with you a card that I stamped directly on Kraft cardstock. It's actually quite dark Kraft cardstock, and what I did to make my image stand out, especially as it is a one-layer card. So we're going to do something similar to this card here, and I'll show you how to do this. And what we'll be using are the vignette tree silhouettes and the Patchwork Frenzy graphic squares stamp sets by STAMPlorations. Okay, so let's get started. So I've already prepared my my base card. So that's the Kraft cardstock, and as you can see, it is quite a dark one. So in order to lighten it and make my stamped images stand out a bit more, I've used some Kraft ink. I'm using the Whisper White by Stampin' Up. And what I've done is I just got like an old baby wipe, basically, which I tend to use for blending quite a lot, and picked up a little bit of ink and rubbed it into my base card to just lighten it a little bit. Initially I was sort of thinking, oh, shall I paint it with a gesso or something else, and then I thought, no, I'll just try the white ink first and see how that goes, and if I get a key with it still on my card for my die inks, and it did seem to work, so I decided I'll stick with that. So just a little bit, just lightly, and as the two colours, the one off your card and the white from the ink, as they blend together, it will actually get a bit creamier with time and look less white. So that's about okay. That's all I want to do. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp my squares into the background. And for that I'm going to use Sahara Sand and Smoky Slate inks by Stampin' Up. So let's get them ready first. Right, so I'm going to start with my little ones with the numbers on. That's one that I've chosen for that. And I'm going to stamp that roughly at the bottom center. And then I'm going to do my one with the words, which I'm going to stamp in Sahara Sand. And I'm going to try and get that either side. It doesn't have to be very precise, this. It's more to sort of just give a bit of texture without adding actually physical texture to your background, and provide a backdrop to your trees, and that in itself will enhance a feeling of depth in your card. So if we do this, just roughly. And then we have this here. So that's your background done. And now what I did is I just had a little mask to add a little shading to the bottom, and it's been heavily used, I'm afraid, because I've been playing around with this for quite a while until I got something that I was relatively happy with, and as often actually less is more. So I'll share the other cards with you, sort of, and the ideas that I initially had, and I mean, see what you think of them. I will also be sharing this on my WordPress blog, so just see. So just a little bit of shading here, not too much. It's more to sort of give the trees a little bit of grounding rather than having to be absolutely precise and perfect. So that's that. Okay. Okay, and I did that with the smoky slate ink, so that can go now. And next we'll be stamping the trees, and the trees I'm stamping with black Versacolor ink. So I've used the medium-sized tree from the set. So I'm going to first stamp the center one of the three, which I want about here. Stamp, and then I'm inking up again. And I'm stamping the one closer to the front, which is going quite a bit lower down, almost like towards the bottom edge really. So that's that. And then I'm going to stamp just a very faint third one. I'm going to put my mask just a little bit to the side here, and that will go about here. So you do that without re-inking, or some people call it generation stamping or something like that. So there you go. Those are your trees. And then once you've stamped the trees, next I'm going to stamp the stitching. Now the stitching is from the Graphic Squares set, and you'll need a little mask again because it will go sort of a bit over the edge at some point, just to keep it in, unless you want to make it completely going and giving it a different frame. So I'm going to start here, and I'm just aligning it, and this is where I need to put my extra bit down, so I'm just going to do it about there. You don't need to mask it off with masking tape or something, just a little piece of scrap card that you can move about as you go along will do. And that goes here. And any unevenness that you had with stamping your squares, you can just very nicely disguise with the stitching when you come to stamp that. Let's go next. And the stitching just gives a really nice frame to your picture background, to your trees and that sort of little sort of distressed grungy type looking scene. I'm going to make this card for my husband because he does like clean and simple cards. He doesn't like much embellishment or many layers or anything that is a bit too fussy. He just doesn't like it. So this is going to be his birthday card, and it's his birthday in a couple of weeks' time. So just do this here. You might see I'm moving away here a bit because I want my stitching to come down into that corner. So I'm actually not quite as close to my my inner square picture, if you want to call it like that. There you go. So that matches that up quite nicely now. That's that. And I stamped this with just simply black Memento ink. I used the Versacolor one because I was stamping over quite a lot of other things, and I find that if you use either a VersaFine or a Versacolor ink, it makes the image stand out a bit more. So next I'll need my sentiment, which I'm just going to simply leave as the Congrats, which is from the Graphic Square set. So I'm just going to stamp that. And I can either stamp it here, could stamp it here, could stamp it in the center. Nope, doesn't look right up the side. So I'm just going to stamp it slightly offset here. And the reason I'm doing that is to almost like give like a triangular type of movement to the card. because you got the trees going there, and it just sort of makes the eye go round a bit more. Had I stamped it there, it would just be in a line like that. So I find this looks a bit more balanced, at least to me. You might have a different opinion. Right, and that's my card done. Now you might notice that the Kraft card I got is white on the inside. Now this is what it was like when I bought it. So it's just simply like that. And as you can see, I've used a little bit less of the Kraft ink for my background here than I used on this card. So it lightened it, but it didn't light it to the extent that you really can see that it is absolutely that it is white that you used. Now, I know this one will blend in a bit better in time. If in a couple of days it will look completely different. So this here sort of gives almost sort of like the same look as you're getting if you were to stamp directly on the card, but your trees are standing out a bit more. Now I've got a couple of trial cards that I made when things just didn't want to work, and I said I'm going to sort of mention why less sometimes is more. Now my initial idea was to have some sort of like paint running down. I thought that might be quite nice because my husband's been doing lots of decorating, but he also likes trees, so I wanted to get too much in probably. Now what I ended up with is a card that is quite grungy, but it's too busy for him. So it's this card here. So as you can see, is I've embossed this down with an embossing fold, and you see the little line of it. So I did, in order to disguise it, I sort of sanded it around a bit, and I also stamped directly onto my Kraft card rather than using the white, and you can see it's not standing out quite as much. The trees aren't standing out quite as much. So then I went around it with sort of some, after I sort of sanded it, I went around it with the Kraft ink and just stamped some splatters and rings from the Holiday Artsy set by STAMPlorations. I quite like it, but I know it's too fuzzy for my husband, so he's not the one to get it. So I think this is a nice grungy card, and it almost like gives the impression that one has been in an artist's studio or something. I then sort of like tried to ink the embossing folder up and see if I can get a varnish effect, which I sort of did, but it's not visible enough on this card here. You just can faintly see, and I just put some dots or splatters in, but I'm not too happy. So this card will not be sent, I'm afraid. But again, you can see with the just stamping it directly onto the Kraft card, it doesn't give enough of a contrast. So this is the one here that I've just shown you is a bit more pleasing to the eye, and you see the trees a bit more. And then another one I've tried doing it side on, and I tried doing some shading at the base of the trees, but I've gone overboard with that, and again it's one that will be discarded, I'm afraid. So but it's just sort of like different ideas for you to play around with, and this is why I've shown you these cards. So I hope you enjoyed my little tutorial. And as always, the details will be on my Tinkercards blog. That's no, not www. Forget the W dot. It's tinkercards.blogspot.com. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it, and I shall see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.